All right. So we're in a series called Encounters with Jesus. And man, I don't know about you. I don't know what you hear. I know what I hear, when I'm going through this in my studies before we get here. It's just amazing. I just feel like we don't study Jesus enough and just see in the rawness and the realness of it. And I know we've got series like The Chosen and all these things, and they can kind of give you perspective, but I like staying to the script, right? And just seeing what does the word say. I don't want to kind of add to it or take away. I just want to know. I'm not trying to make it dramatic. I just want to know what was it about. But I'm a picture boy. When I read, man, my mind goes. That's why I like reading books better than I do watching movies, because I don't want somebody else interpreting what I think ought to look like, right? And so for me, books are better. I prefer a book to a movie every day because it just lets my mind that God's given me to kind of express what I feel like it looks like. So when I'm gonna tell you this story, you're gonna see it maybe differently than I do, but that's what's amazing about that. But the truth stays the same, and that's what we're hunting for is truth. And so what we're doing is looking to see those one-on-one encounters. Because it's easy to put Jesus at a distance, right? And just go, yeah, he taught this and he taught that. Like the generic people who want to think they know Jesus, and so they're using him sometimes as a weapon, right? It's just, well, Jesus would do it this way or Jesus would do it that way. And most of the people I hear say that, I'm like, I don't think you've even really read the book, and I don't even think you know who you're talking about, right? And so it's important for us to begin to look at these intimate conversations that he has, because that, to me, that's where the gold is. I love the truth, the teaching, like the Sermon on the Mount. We're not going to look at that. In fact, we just flew over it because we last week we looked at Levi, and now we just bypassed it, and this is the next thing that happens, or similar, so to speak. But what we're doing is just capturing these kind of intimate moments, and so this was pretty powerful. Let me kind of bring you up to where we are without a lengthy review. We last left off last week with Jesus walking by the seashore, coming up from that. Levi's tax booth is there, and so he looks at him and says, hey, follow me. And Levi, who we know is Matthew, right, left everything and followed. There's a whole lot of stuff that we looked at last week that's in that one little scene because it says so much about who Levi was, right, and how hated he was because of what he did. He was a sellout. We looked at all of that. We saw how Jesus was unconcerned with his political background, with his thievery, right? And that's what we try to remind ourselves all the time. God's not trying to beat us up over our sin. He simply wants it gone. That's the point, right? And so we saw that in that story. We saw the party that Jesus, that Matthew gave. We call them Matthew parties where we come from. And so he invited all of his friends, and the Pharisees are out there. Remember all the brouhaha that was going on. And so there's this interaction with them. And so what happened after that is the crowds are continuing to grow. He appoints the apostles. So now he went up on the mountain, appointed all the 12. We're not really going to talk about that because again, it's not that intimate face-to-face encounter. Then he preached the Sermon on the Mount. He finishes the Sermon on the Mount, and he travels to Capernaum, which is where we're going to find ourselves today. Now, Capernaum is on the western side of the Sea of Galilee, up near the north, and where his Sermon on the Mount was about a 2.5 mile downhill deal, but it took about 45 minutes to get there just because of the way the craggy places and all that work. So they walked about 45 minutes, and he comes to Capernaum. Now that's his adopted hometown. You remember he got kicked out of Nazareth. They were going to throw him off the cliff, and he goes, it's not a good day for that to happen, and just walks on by them. And that was where he said, hey, a prophet's not without honor in his hometown. And so he makes Capernaum his home. It's the home of Peter. Most likely that was a base for him, that he would spend some time in Peter's home. That could have been very well, like it was Mary and Martha down in or we can say up to Jerusalem, but down in the southern area where Jerusalem was, near there. He stayed with Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. Up here, remember, he didn't have a home, didn't have a bed, a place to lay his head, right? So this is what's happening. So it's Peter's house. It's on the northwest shore of the Sea of Galilee, if you kind of look at maps and see all of that. It was a major travel route. It was the Via Maris is what it's called. It's actually the way of the sea. So this is what made this one spot kind of pretty powerful, because it was the trade route and everything else to get from Egypt up through there to Syria, right, to Damascus, that kind of area. And so it's this major trade route, which what happens there is it means that there's a lot of commerce, but there's also a lot of communication, right? You didn't have like, CNN, Fox. You didn't have all these news channels to tell you what was going on. You had humans, right? So you had these gossips that would go back and forth. They're just bringing news to town. And so whatever was happening, that in fact, that's how the gospel spread a lot of times. They come through there from Egypt, and they're going through Capernaum, and they stop there for lunch or whatever, and they're hearing all these stories, and on their way to Syria, well, they're carrying Jesus. Even the ones who didn't know him are carrying like truth everywhere. So this is what's going on, and so it's a fishing village. There's probably in Jesus' day, best estimates, about 1,500 people are in that village. Right? He lived there. He taught there. Sermon on the Mount. The ones when Peter went fishing, remember the crowd came. He steps in the boat. It's Capernaum. So all of these teaching things happen in Capernaum. I just want you to know this because sometimes it gets a little confusing in my mind. Like, where was he when he did all these things? So I take a little bit of time to help us understand kind of how that is because to me, it makes the story come alive in that sense. He did miracles there. Lots of miracles there. That's where the leper was, right? And that's where they dropped the guy from the roof. We've seen all of those things. That all happened there. He called his disciples there. For the most part, a lot of these disciples grew up in that area as well. We now we know that Levi did. We also know that James and John, Peter and Andrew, that's almost half of them were there. There's no reason to believe that some of the others weren't from that same area. There were a few outliers, but for the most part, this is kind of where they all were. Now, that's the city that we're coming from. Now, here's an interesting thing because if you go to near the end of Jesus' days, it doesn't go well for Capernaum, and I want you to hear this because it's kind of an indictment. Matthew records this in chapter 11. It says this, "And you, Capernaum, will you be lifted to the heavens? No, you're going down to Hades. For if the miracles that were performed in you had been performed in Sodom, it would have remained to this day." He's like, man, there were more miracles done in your area than anywhere else. So as Jesus gets to the end of his days, and if there's a place that you would say that's the hub of all the activity of what Jesus did, would be right there. In fact, he says, man, it's not going to go well for you. You didn't repent. Now we're going to look at one man who did this morning. That's what I'm excited about. But for the vast majority of the city, just ignored everything that was going on. Isn't it amazing how you can have God in the center of everything going on in your world and miss him, right? I mean, I think that happens to us a lot of times, right? I mean, in that sense, we fail to see how he's working, and so we kind of live in our human bubble as opposed to going, no. Just like that song, his eye is on the sparrow, right? And so I know he watches me. I don't think sometimes we live with that reality. Anyway, that's a sidebar. So let's look at the story really quick and just draw some conclusions. It says, when he had completed all his teachings and in the hearing of the people, he went to Capernaum. So there, I just brought you up to speed there. Now, a centurion's slave who was highly regarded by him was sick and about to die. So let's talk about centurions for a minute, just so you get the picture of what this is. So this is a man who's a seasoned warrior, right? He's a soldier in the Roman army. He has, some would get to this position kind of as veterans, right? So he obviously was a veteran. He has served in wars. They're usually the cream of the crop, the leader, so to speak. And so he's a battle-hardened soldier. He's in charge of 80 to 100 people. That's where the centurion came from. The troops under him were 100. When there's not a battle, they still serve as they're considered. He has a station there at Capernaum, right? Like a military outpost. So sometimes they do what ours do. They do construction. They do other things, right? If there's no war, they're still working because they get paid. So this is how that goes. So you've got this centurion, and he's got 100 men under him, and he's giving them orders, and he's doing all the things he does. So he's a powerful guy there, and they're doing whatever they do, soldiers do in peacetime in the sense. And so that's where they are. Now he's highly respected by the community. And he's feared. I mean, listen, it's all his soldiers said, hey, carry my bag a mile. You are obligated to do that. You come to Capernaum and somebody's coming through there and the soldier goes, hey, carry my bag. Well, you're going to carry it. In fact, Jesus said, like we just finished kind of looking at the sermon, what he said is, hey, and that would be the very city, right? You see that he's talking about those things. So if a soldier comes and says, carry my bag, don't just go with him one, go with him two, right? One is a slave. Like the government sometimes forces us to do things we feel like we're in slavery, right? So what Jesus is saying, I want you to flip the script. I want you to do just what they say. I want you to go over and above and do even more to let them know that you're a slave of nobody, but you're a servant of the Most High God. That's what a second mile individual looks like. And so this would have been how they would have learned that deal. He's fairly well compensated at that level. So that hence the reason why he had servants and all those other things, right? So you're at that branch of government there. You're pretty set financially. You're also very loyal to Caesar. So this is who he was. Now, if you're a Jew, you're seeing him as an occupier. Like, this is our land. You Romans don't belong here, right? You remember that. I mean, we know that deep down that these Jews are like, we are the people of God. Our king is greater than all the others. And David was the greatest of them all, and he ain't here anymore, but there's going to come one, and we're waiting on him. You just wait, right? This is the attitude of a Jew. This is what they're thinking. And they would look at him, and they would go, you're just unclean. You're a Gentile, right? So it's like he's unclean. And I want you to hear this because it's going to come down to something different in a minute. That's generally speaking, okay? Just like, it's easy to say the South is racist, right? Or something like that, right? And we know, we have a history. You can look at it, you can see that. But isn't it funny how there are certain things where you look at life and you go, well, that's not true, right? I've got Hispanic friends and at work, and I've got some black friends at work, and I think we have an Oriental that just started or has this, the leaning that way, American. But anyway, it's like we all get along. We're all family, right? So it's not fair to go, well, the whole South. Well, not really. Not my little bubble, right? I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but not my bubble, right? So I say that because I want you to understand that this centurion is different than a lot of the others. But he's not a Christ follower. So let's just look at it. So he says this in verse 3. When he heard about Jesus, all right? So he's got a slave who's highly regarded and was sick and about to die. Let me tell you what happens most of the time when there's a slave. There's a slave and he gets sick. It's the same thing in their world. It's the same thing you would do with whatever. It's what they did with the sheep that were blemished. Kind of clean them up, sell them for better, right? So you got a slave that's a little sick or things are going on, kind of clean them up, make them look good, and put them on the auction, get rid of them, because that's the easiest thing to do. You don't have to hassle with anything. Just get you a new one, right? Your car's all worn out. Well, throw it away, get a new one. But this guy's like, I really, really love this slave, right? So there's something about him already that's a little different. I just want you to hear that. You may not see that in there, but that's what I see going on, because that's unusual that a slave would be highly regarded. You would have a slave that you're regarded, right? Because they're valuable of some sort. But this one felt like they probably brought him more into the family kind of thing, there's a relationship going on there. So when he heard about Jesus, he sent some Jewish elders to him, asking him to come and save the life of his slave. So now we know a couple of other things. This one's different because he loved his slave, which most don't. We also know that he had relationships with Jews, which is very hard to do, right? So, but it says that, right? It says he sent Jewish elders to them. Now, let's talk about what that looks like. Like what is a Jewish elder? So a Jewish elder would be one. So they had synagogues in each of the cities. Think of a synagogue as a little outpost of the temple, right? Because you couldn't go to Jerusalem all the time for whatever reason. So every village, for the most part, had a synagogue in it. Now, it was there so that you would go there on the Sabbath. You would hear these elders and Pharisees and others. Just because they're a Jewish elder doesn't mean they're a Pharisee. It means that they're influential leaders who are Jewish people who know the truth. They're older people. They settle disputes, right? So if you've got an issue, they kind of function as judge there in Israel because they don't want to go to the Roman courts, right? The Jews don't. The Jews want to stay among their people. They don't want anything to do with Rome. They don't believe Rome has any value. So if they've got a skirmish between the two, they don't go to Roman courts. they go to the synagogue, and one of the elders or several will sit and listen to whatever's going on. Right? They were the teachers. The synagogue also functioned as kind of the town hall. It would be where you would gather. It's a community center. In fact, in India, I think I mentioned it to you, in Warrangal, we have Mission India Bible College. That's what it says, MIBC. But underneath it says community center, right? Because you can't go to church there. I mean, in a lot of ways. And so it's just a community center, so it becomes the hub of life. This is kind of what's going on here, right? And so that's the happenings. And so we come here, and he says this. So the Jewish elders said to him and asked him to come and save the life of his slave. Verse 4. When they came to Jesus, they strongly urged him, saying, he is worthy for you to grant this to him. Now listen, we're going to look at a lot of other things. But it's interesting to me, though, that he deserves this. It's interesting because really, and it's funny how we think that about a lot of people, right? Oh man, they just deserve this. Well, actually, we deserve nothing. You remember that? Remember that we're just dirty, rotten, stinking little slaves? And so we really, we're above ground. We get air and food, and that's about it. Everything else is a plus that God gives to us. And so it's interesting that they would say that. But listen to what's going on. There's several things happening here. One, we're going to read in a minute about these Jewish elders. So, I'm going to come back to that point. Let's look at this. When they came to Jesus, they strongly urged him, saying, he is worthy for you to grant this to him. Now listen to what they say. For he loves our nation. Here's a Gentile soldier who actually loves the people of Israel, the people of God, right? It's an unusual thing, right? We find friends like that a lot of times, though, right? We have governmental officials that feel kindly toward us, whether they're believers or not. They know, hey, well, the Christians really, they do help in a lot of ways, right? So there is that kind of a thing, and that's what's going on here. Hey, he loves our nation, and listen to this, and it was he who built us our synagogue. Not like he contributed. A lot of people say, well, he contributed to the synagogue. No. He built the thing. He got his soldiers together, he funded the thing, and he built the synagogue so the Jewish people had a community center to go to. Already, there's something different about this centurion. Now it says this. Now Jesus started on his way with them. Now I love that phrase too, right? Listen, I think we forget that Jesus goes where we invite him to, right? I mean, that's the whole thing. From our prayer, from our knees, I can invite him to go, hey, there's some people in India that need some help. Would you go there? Or Miss Faye's son-in-law is struggling. Can you meet that need, right? You see what I'm saying? I love the fact that Jesus like, okay, he's a yes God. I think we should hear that. We should know that. Now, he will always bring his own stipulations to it, but he'll go, right? This is what it says. And he said, so now he starts on his way with him, but already when he was not yet far from the house, the centurion sent friends. So now he's already sent the Jewish elders, and they're on their way back, and then he goes, wait a minute. Let me, so he gets some friends together. Now listen, just for the record, this guy could have sent soldiers to Jesus and said, hey, come with us, right? They could have. They had that right, and Jesus would have gone, okay, right? He didn't, but he very well could have. He had that kind of authority. He could have spoken, and anybody in Capernaum had to come wherever he wanted, do whatever he wanted, right? That's just the way it was. And so we see this, and here's what I call the aha moment of the centurion. Look what he says. He said, when they're already far off, the centurion sent friends saying to him, Lord, do not trouble yourself further, for I am not worthy for you to enter under my roof. All right, you hear what's going on? He's a Gentile. One, Jews don't normally go into the house of a Gentile because it makes them defiled. But the fact that he's saying, he's flipped the script, right? I mean, so for Jesus being a normal Jew would go, I'm not going in that house. But he's like, I don't want you in my house because you're so much greater. You hear what's going on? This is crazy. And so he says, Lord, don't trouble yourself. I'm not worthy of you to enter under my roof. Now, I don't believe they've had any one-on-one encounters at this point. He's just simply heard all the stories and rubbed shoulders with everybody that's like, man, did you see what happened when they tore that roof down at that house and that guy walked out? Remember how mad the Pharisees, right? And they're telling these stories. Remember, it's a communication hub. And so he's hearing all those things and he's collecting. And soldiers are coming back from where they are. I was down in Jerusalem when he was down there. Here's what happened, right? And so he's got all of this stuff. And so from a distance, he's already made up his mind that there's something different about this man named Jesus. I'm not even worthy to have a conversation about him. And that lets me know a lot about a man. It says this. Verse 7. For that reason, I did not even consider myself worthy to come to you, but just say the word, and my servant shall be healed. That is crazy, right? He's figured it out. Everybody else wants, hey, come Jesus, right? That's what they're wanting. Everybody's like, or go to Jesus, get Jesus to come to you, right? And that's what's happening. Mary, Martha, Lazarus, hey, Jesus, you got to come, right? That was their response at the end of this whole thing. But this soldier figures it out and goes, wait a minute. Obviously, he has authority over demons. I heard the stories. Obviously, he has authority over the fish. I saw the catch. Obviously, he can even sway evil dirtbag tax collectors. I heard the story, right? He took the leper. But he did. And he cured the guy. I heard the story. He's figuring all this up in his head and going, you know what? He's just like me. He tells a soldier to go, and they go. He tells them to come, they come. That's just the way it works. I'm a man under authority. So is he. He didn't have to show up. This is crazy. And so he says this. This is what he says, right? Verse 8. I also am a man under authority, with soldiers under myself. And I say to this one, go, and he goes. And another, come, and he comes. And to my slave, do this, and he does it. Now, when Jesus heard this, he was amazed at him. Now, I like the way the older versions say he marveled, right? Listen, this centurion caused the creator of the universe to marvel at something, to be amazed at something. And then that makes me think, I can do things here that will make God amazed. And I thought, what a crazy thought, right? That we can make God go, or say like the old folk used to say, my, right? God can go, look at that one. Hey, Gabriel, come here, look at this one, right? My, right? Now that piques my curiosity. Now I'm in the story. I want to know the rest. You already do, but we're pretending that we don't, right? I want to know the rest because that's a crazy thought that's how this thing works. And so here's this guy that's completely humble, but has this amazing faith. And here's what happens. Now, when Jesus heard this, he was marveling at him and turned and said to the crowd that was following him, because it wasn't just him that went, right? They're not going to leave him alone, right? The Jewish leaders go, hey, Jesus, could you come? This guy, he really deserves everything. We'd really like, could you please come and help him, right? And so he's like, yeah, I can go. Well, then Peter's like, well, I'm going too. Andrew's like, well, I'm not being left out. James and John are going, he might be in trouble. He might need some brawn, some brutality. We're there, right? And Levi's like, well, I'm going to, yeah, I got nothing to do. I don't have a job anymore, right? And so they're all just going, we'll go with you. Plus, whoever was following him from the mountainside down, because they never left him alone. He had to go out at night all the way to the mountainside to get away just to pray. And so there's a crowd there coming with him. But listen, he never misses a teaching opportunity. So look what he says. Now, when Jesus heard this, he was amazed and turned to the crowd and said to those following, I say to you, not even in Israel have I found such great faith. Not in Israel have I seen a faith like this. Shame on everyone. He didn't say it because that's not the way he works, but that's what it is. Now, Matthew adds a little statement in here, and I want to give that one to you. He says this, and I say to you, this completes the sentence, right? I've never seen such great faith in all of Israel. And then Matthew adds this phrase, and I say to you that many will come from east and west and recline at the table of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the sons of the kingdom will be thrown out into outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. You know what he's saying? This is his kind of the first time we hear that the gospel's not just for the Jews. It's for everybody. And he says, look, I'm telling you, you think you got the handle on the relationship with God. This centurion's kicking your tail in that area. He's got greater faith in me than you do. And guess what? He ain't the only one. When we get to heaven, there'll be a room full of them up there, not just you, right? That's good news for you and me, just in case you missed that. That's good news. And so this is a scenario that's going on. So let's get back to the other one. What's he looking for, right? And when those who had been sent returned to the house, they found the slave in good health, right? I love that. What he believed was true. Guys, I got you on this one, right? I love that. You know what he's looking for? Remember, I think I've shared this before. The only parable that ends with a question is the one where he says, "No, will the Son of Man find faith on the earth when he comes?" Right? But this is what he wants. Let me bring some Old Testament flair to this thing. In Isaiah chapter 66, verse 2, he says this: "For my hand made all these things." So all these things came into being, declares the Lord. "But I will look to this one, at one who is humbled, contrite in spirit, and who trembles at my word." Right? So you want to know how to make God go, my. We'll be humble. Be contrite. That is, that inward looking, like, hey, I realize not only am I humble, but I'm a pauper. That's what it means to be poor in spirit. Right? That's one of the Beatitudes. And he says this: who trembles at his word, who knows that God means what he says and says what he means. Powerful. And then you know what 2 Chronicles 16:9 says, right? The eyes of the Lord move to and fro about the earth, that he may strongly support those whose hearts are fully his. Listen, God has unlimited authority. This is what he teaches me here, right? He speaks. When he says to that slave from a distance, be healed, not one demon in hell could get in the way and intercept that. Nobody could stop. That went out of his mouth. There's none that can reverse it. That's what the scripture says, right? He speaks and there's none that can reverse it. That sickness that's there, it's just like the waves that Job spoke of. Here shall your proud waves stop, right? He knows where they're going to stop. This is how powerful the God that we serve is. It's not our works that make God marvel, although we think it is. Man, God's proud of me. I preached today. God's proud of me. I gave money to somebody. God, no, you know what he's proud about? Our faith. That's what he's proud of. That we go, if God don't help, help ain't coming. You heard that phrase before? This is what it is. Here's a question I guess I'm asking as we kind of close this thing out. Is yours working? The faith? Really? Just think about it. Just ask him. Have you asked God for some things that you go, it's a little outside the box, but it's what I really, really want? Right? Have you done that? Have you stepped in faith? Right? I look back over our life and there's several things. I'm not going to bore you with all the stories, but I do remember the one where when we first got our first house. We had some very clear plans. We had just planted a church out in the deep clay area. I wanted to live out there. We were living in Roebuck. Our kids were playing softball there in Clay, and we wanted a house, and kind of had some parameters that we just asked the Lord for, right? I was said, Lord, I don't want to go any further than Janet Drive, which is out Old Springville Road. My brother lived on Janet. I don't want to go past that. It felt like in the middle of nowhere already at that part, but at least I had my brother there. We wanted acreage because we had 3 kids at that time, and we just wanted some land. We wanted to have a little garden. And she did. I didn't. I never wanted anything to do with that, but she did. So I say we, but it was really her that I got drug into that, right? And so we wanted a place. And so we would pray. We would go look at things. And I mean, I took her to places. There were houses that literally the grass was growing through. I yelled, "Baby, look with my eyes, and we can make this, you know." And she was like, "No," right? And so we were sitting in the ballpark, and a friend of ours said, "Hey, they knew what we've been praying." They said, "The Allreds have a house up on Old Springville Road. It's not even up for sale yet, but I think they want to sell it. Why don't you go look?" So we get in the car. I mean, right after that ball game. And we start riding up, and I'm looking at numbers. I'm like, it's going to be past Janet Drive. It's going to be, It's the house that backs up to Janet Drive on Old Springville Road. In fact, there's a gate of all the so the land was there, and Janet Drive went this way, and there's houses. My brother's house, his fence had a gate into the property we ultimately bought. But that's how gracious God is, right? We just like, hey, Lord, I'm asking for that. And he's like, I got you. Now, does he always do that? No. And thank God. I don't know. I don't want to know the what ifs. I don't want to know what if he had given me what I thought I wanted. And so there is this trust factor, right? I don't want us to be deceived in this whole thing about, you got to have faith in your faith. And I mean, listen, faith is one of those odd things, and I don't understand it at all, but I do know this. I'm going to live in a posture that says if God don't help, help ain't coming. And that he delights in the prayers of his saints. And so I'm just bold enough and big enough to go, God, I want that. I want a piece of property within these parameters. Well, we got it. It was amazing. It's been us 2 years to fix it up. That's a whole other story. But I want you to understand, this is how God operates, right? Let's think this way. Honestly, and I'm not like acting like I'm the thing. I'm just saying, this week coming up is the first week I start working 3 days at Tracery, and I'm not working Thursday, Friday. Now, just so we're clear, I don't get paid for Thursday, Friday either. So I took kind of a healthy chunk of a pay deduction to be where we are. Have we figured all that out yet? Not really. I think we're going to be okay financially, but in truth, I know we are, because I ask in faith on the plane. I shared this with you before, Mr. Ramani. On the plane back from India, I had 20-something hours all by myself. And everybody else didn't speak my language, so, because normally I'm talking, but now I'm like, okay. And so I'm just talking to Jesus, and I'm journaling, and I'm writing, and I'm thinking about everything that happened back there. And not to take away from any work, I love what I do, but I was like, I feel like I'm not built for that, Lord. I want to do more, and I love what I do. It's a good gig. I'm seeing change. I just let it go to the Lord last week, right? So I'm like, I like what's going on here. I don't know more, and I don't know what that looks like, and I don't know where you're going to take me, but I can just put myself in position, so I'm going to quit, okay? And so that's what I did. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm expecting God to do something in my life. Now, he may not. Maybe poverty and challenges is what he wants. I'm going to be all right with that. I don't think that's what it is. I think he's putting me in position to be able to do more ministry. And so I'm looking for that. But here's what I'm telling you. This is for all of us. I don't know what it is you're waiting on, but just maybe step in faith. Ask God for the outrageous. See what happens. What if he says no? It's not because he's mad at us. It's because he's like, that's not what's best for you, son. Right? So I love the freedom I have. It's like when you were a kid, you could ask your parents, "You want to go somewhere?" And if you could, you could. If you didn't, you didn't. But all right. That's the way this is. Man, it's powerful. We are going to celebrate communion. I'm going to play a song that we played last week because I like it, and we're going to enjoy being together. Love you guys.